Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Zoe, and in this video, I wanted to talk a bit about confidence, especially why it can feel so hard to be confident and how we can actually develop real confidence in ourselves. Now, growing up, I used to be painfully shy. I wanted nothing more than to be confident, and I remember I used to tell myself a lot, once I have this, then I will be confident. And it just never really worked that way. I would try to become more confident through all of these surface level changes, whether that's in my appearance, my behavior, trying to fake it, but it would never feel real. It would never actually become easier. And it wasn't until I started thinking about the things that actually made me feel confident in myself and in my life, when I realized that all of these specific things are somehow tied to challenges that I have overcome in order to gain that confidence. It would be things where I have in the past really pushed myself. I have done something I might have doubted whether I was capable of achieving this, but by doing it anyways, it would then make me think about myself like, oh wow, Zoe, you've done this hard thing. You were capable of doing this. I would think more highly of myself. And the more of these kind of challenges that I would do and actually overcome, the more it would contribute to my self-esteem. Now, am I as confident as I want to be? No, definitely not. But I do feel like I am moving in the right direction. I'm getting there. And that's because compared to back then, I now understand better where confidence comes from. And it's not something that some people just have and some don't. It's not something that you need to find or completely fake it. I know that's something you hear a lot, the whole fake it till you make it, and everyone's just pretending to be confident until they are. And while I believe there's some truth to that, which I will touch on later, that's not what real confidence is. Real confidence is being confident in yourself. It is knowing that you will successfully overcome difficult situations. And I believe that is what all of us want. We want to have that assurance in ourselves so that we don't have to be afraid of those situations. So to understand where confidence comes from, you need to look at your self-concept. Your self-concept is the image you have of yourself. This is a sum of beliefs that are formed by your experiences. And you can, for example, ask yourself, I am someone who ... and then when you fill that out, whatever comes to mind, all of these things, write them down and be honest with yourself. This will be a reflection of your self-concept. This is the image and the total of beliefs that you hold about yourself that make up your self-concept. And the thing is, whatever self-concept we have is what we will always act out in the world. You might, for example, say, I am someone who is very capable, independent. I'm someone who always comes out on top in situations. And these would all be positive things, but it could also be negative. You might think, I am someone who never finishes what I start. I am someone who gets nervous or is awkward in social situations, or I am someone who is lazy, incapable. These are all negative beliefs, and most likely your self-concept will be a mix of both positive and negative beliefs you hold about yourself. Now, if they are more positive than negative, then this will contribute to a healthy or positive self-esteem. If you have more negative beliefs about yourself, then you will probably have a lower self-esteem. It's that simple. And like I said, your beliefs come from your life experiences. So we form our beliefs about ourselves from our experiences, but these don't have to be first-hand experiences. And oftentimes that is the problem. We absorb beliefs that other people might give to us or put on us, and because we never then go out and seek experiences that prove this belief is wrong, we then become stuck with it. For example, if someone growing up in school tells you, oh, you're not very smart, you can't do this thing, you might absorb that belief and internalize it and think that of yourself, and because of this, you might never go and pursue challenges because you don't believe you're a smart person. But if you then don't even go out to get the experience to prove the contrary, you never get an opportunity to know that you are a smart person, then you're stuck with this old belief, but it doesn't serve you, it holds you back. And that's what you call a limiting belief. Fortunately, you can change any belief you hold about yourself and in your self-concept through experience and replacing it. Because if you have a negative belief about yourself, if you can go and prove that it is not true, then you can replace it with a more positive one. You need the real world experiences that can prove you have these positive qualities in yourself. And with something like confidence, this means you need experience in overcoming difficulties and challenges, because that is what confidence is. It is having confidence in yourself, in your ability. Now, I've found a very simple, but in my opinion, the best way to go about collecting these experiences to improve your self-concept, to improve your confidence, is actually by following one of Jung's most favorite lines, which is, "Where your fear is, there is your task." This basically means going out and confronting the things you fear and overcoming them to develop your self-esteem. It's very simple, but it will be one of the hardest things you do. So here's what you want to do. You want to go and grab a pen and paper and then start writing a long list of literally everything you are afraid to do. Now, this may feel really triggering for you because in shadow work, your fear is the barrier between your ego and the unconscious. Your fear marks where your ego doesn't want to go. However, all of these things that you suppress because of your fear, they also contain the very seeds to your potential. Think, all of your untapped talents, strengths, and possibilities that are all walled off by this barrier of fear. Fear isn't a sign of where you shouldn't go or what you should avoid and stay away from. It's the opposite. Your fear illuminates the path to what you need to confront in order to realize your fullest potential. Just ask yourself, how many things are you not doing? How many ways are you holding yourself back because of your fear? And fear is something that exists entirely within your head. It's not real in the world around you. But so often we don't even recognize that our fear is what is holding us back. So in order to confront it, you need to understand what the purpose of your fear is. If we think about it, we fear the things that threaten our survival. But a lot of the time, these fears are formed in childhood, and we continue to carry them into adulthood where they might not actually be relevant or proportionate to our situations anymore. As a child, our survival depends on other people, and this is exactly where so many fears come from, because when our survival depends on others liking us or accepting us and taking care of us, then we need to make sure that we are accepted by others. This is where you get all of those little fears, such as the fears of being judged, the fear of being perceived, of making mistakes, of being disliked. All of these fears try to keep us safe when we're young, but as you mature and you're no longer dependent on other people in the same way, that is when these fears start holding you back more than helping you. And this is what's also a big part of shadow work. For example, we might, growing up, suppress our anger because we believe that if we are angry, we are unloved. And like I said, this is a big threat to our survival when we are young. So we start to develop a fear around expressing our anger, and this is what causes us to suppress it more and more. But then when you're an adult, and your anger is triggered because it naturally comes up in a situation, then when you suppress it, it doesn't just go away. It comes up through resentment, being passive-aggressive, becoming bitter, and most importantly, it starts to create a negative self-image, because when you're unable to use a part of yourself such as anger, because you're suppressing it out of fear, then you will start to view yourself in that negative light. When you're not able to use it, you will start to think, why am I so weak? Why am I so helpless? I let people walk all over me, and then I feel so bad about it. This is what starts to form a negative self-esteem and self-image. The only way you can defeat a fear is by proving to yourself that there is nothing to fear. Have you ever been afraid of something until you actually did it and then realized that there was nothing to be afraid of in the first place? I know when I was younger, I once took part in this parkour course over summer. And I remember in the very beginning, one of the things you're supposed to do is you would run and jump off this little trampoline, and we were learning to do a sort of roll or flip in the air. And for the first week, I was just so terrified of doing this because I was afraid of doing this roll and then falling onto the mat below. And because of this, I could not get myself to actually try to do the trick. Every single time I would run up to the trampoline and my body would just stop. I wouldn't even let myself try. Every single time I broke off just before I got there, and it was like this mental barrier that I had that I couldn't get over, and it was becoming so frustrating because it was such a small thing. I remember it was actually another person in this course who gave me a great piece of advice by saying, try to run and do it, but with the purpose of letting yourself fall. So running up to fall onto the mat, not even trying to do the trick, just to let yourself fall. And I remember I did this very hesitantly and nervously, but I ran up and I jumped and I fell onto the mat. And all of a sudden I realized that it was no big deal at all. It wasn't anything to be afraid of, and I did this a few more times until I realized that being afraid of falling wasn't a real fear, and only then was I actually able to try to do the trick. And it was through facing the very thing that I was so afraid of the whole time and realizing that it wasn't actually a valid fear at all. It was fine, and I had the experience of falling and nothing happened. So that fear vanished. And I think we can go about many fears in life in exactly this way. If you ask yourself in so many situations of little fears, limiting beliefs, right? What is the worst that can happen? It's often nothing. We just make this out to be such a big, looming, scary, intangible fear in our minds, but it has no tie in reality. For example, if you take the fear of judgment, it's something I used to be very nervous about, going out and always being afraid that I was doing something wrong and that people were watching me and judging me. But then if you think about this, what happens then? If you go out and you're afraid that people are thinking badly of you, what then? What, the worst thing they can do is walk up to you, I guess, and say something mean, and then what? You just go on with your life. It doesn't actually matter. Nothing happens, but we're so afraid of these consequences that don't exist, that aren't real. And that's exactly how it is with all of these little fears. We don't even realize how much they restrict us in life, but they're always there in the back of your head. And they make us self-sabotage. They hold us back from realizing our full potential in life. Just imagine what your life would be if, instead of being afraid of the things you wrote down on the list, you would be confident in those areas. How different and how much easier would your life feel? So anyways, you're going to write a big list. You can even use a journal, write down all the big things, the little things that come to mind that you would be afraid to do. And you can also think of things you see other people doing where you think to yourself, oh, I could never do that. I wouldn't be able to. These are all limiting beliefs just the same. And then, this is the fun part, you get to start facing them. Every day, you can try to face one thing on this list. And now keep in mind, your resilience and mental energy will vary day to day. So you can choose whatever feels doable for that day. It's important that it doesn't feel completely out of reach, but it feels uncomfortable. It still feels challenging. And a lot of these things you will be doing again and again, repeatedly, until they become easier for you. Because that's the thing with facing your fears. The more you do them, the less fear there is around it. It's really like, if you think of this like a rubber band that you are gradually stretching, and the more you do this, with each fear marking a distance on that band, the more you do this, the greater it becomes, the more fits inside of the rubber band and feels easy to you, till eventually you will be able to do things that in the beginning felt really scary to you, but now, because you've done all these things leading up to it, will only feel challenging, but doable. And I believe this is how most people do it. When you see other people in life doing something that you would be so scared to do yourself, it isn't because they jumped from 0 to 100, but it's because they have the experience of doing all these things leading up to that point. So for them, it might feel normal. It might feel easier. I know I definitely feel that way with making these videos. I was so terrified in the beginning, and I still do get very nervous, but now, in comparison, it feels so much easier, all parts of it, and that is only because of the experience of doing it again and again. You've probably heard the saying that any fear you face 10 times will no longer feel scary, and that's maybe a good little marker that you can keep in mind when doing this, almost with the goal of doing these things 10 times. If they are things you want to do but you're afraid to do, that's a good amount to push yourself until it becomes easier. But trust me when I say that of everything I read and learn of self-development, this is truly one of those things, and why I believe it's such a famous line from Jung, that if you do nothing else but this for a few months, making the effort to go out and confront your fears and doing so consistently, your life will change so much. Your self-concept will change in that time, and you will be much more of the person you want to be by the end of it. So if you want to be more confident, this isn't something you can just find or fake by pretending, because all of those fears in your mind will still be real, and everything you do, even when you're faking it, will feel so hard to do because of these fears. The whole act of trying to be confident will become such a burden to keep up, and that's because it's unnatural. But if you actually build your confidence and self-esteem through proving to yourself that you are capable of overcoming difficulties and challenges, then you are confident in yourself. Then the confidence that you gain is real, because life actually becomes easier. So start listing out all of the things you fear, the big things, the little things, and by confronting them and realizing that you can do so, you will be reshaping your self-concept. The person you want to be will then be real. Whether you want to be more confident in going out and socializing, pursuing a dream, whatever it is, recognize that fear is the only thing holding you back, and that this fear exists entirely in your mind. It's like the saying, everything you want in life is on the other side of your fear. So I hope this resonates. I know this is something that has helped a lot for me, and I need to keep reminding myself to do, because like I said, developing your confidence and self-esteem isn't a one-time thing, because your self-concept is something that is always changing. It is always a growing reflection of your experiences, in other words, what you do day to day. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Bye!